live and mics are on.
Okay. Alrighty. It is just about 6 o'clock and I'll call this work session to order. And I will punt it over to Courtney.
Okay, so tonight we're having a presentation by Ken and Jonathan Lang, who are surveyors on a development project over on Nash Road, 1303 Nash Road. So it's going to be just open discussion, Q&A, because this development project will require various applications that the commission is going to need to review and approve. You know, preliminary replat, rezone, CUP. So it's going to be a huge project, and there's a lot of new pieces that the city and the commission haven't ever dealt with before. So we just want to have this open discussion right now to kind of get everyone familiar with the project and have the opportunity to ask any questions if they have any. So I'll turn it over now to Jonathan and Ken Lang, who are the surveyors, and they'll just kind of give a brief rundown on the project, and then we'll be able to discuss the different application pieces and any questions you may have and get hopefully some answers and discussion on that.
Sort of starting from scratch.
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, Jonathan, you can take it from here.
Yep. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jonathan Lang. I'm the president at Lang & Associates Land Surveyors in Anchorage. My father and business partner, Ken, is here with me. On behalf of Resurrection Bay Investment, LLC, we're presenting you with this plan for Mount Alice Estates planned unit development with phase 1. This plan asks for a subdivision, a rezone of the property, a conditional use permit, and potentially a code amendment. The overview, the contiguously owned property is 107.2 acres. It's bisected by Nash Road. Mount Alice Estates Phase 1 is a planned unit development with 11 lots, 3 tracts, and a roadway tract, and all of this property is south of Nash Road, so between Nash Road and the water. And then there will be a single tract north of Nash Road for future development. There is a 40-acre parcel also owned by Resurrection Bay Investment LLC that is part of this development, but not included in this phase of the subdivision. And that portion is outside of the city limits. The property is bordered on the east side by the Seward city limits. The properties to the north, east, and south are all zone resource management and are owned by either the state of Alaska or the city of Seward. Tidelands lay immediately west of our proposed Tract C and lots 5 through lot 11. The property is west of Tracts A and B, or the property to the west of Tracts A and B is zoned industrial. For the subdivision, Tract B will be residential condominiums. All other lots and tracts will be developed as uses permitted in the Harbor Commercial Zone. All lots are intended to have water access. Tract A is being reserved for future development. Mount Alice Estates Planned Unit Development Phase 1 is a mixed-use planned unit development with a gated private street. Concurrent to this request, the developers are seeking a rezone to Harbor Commercial. The property is currently zoned resource management. Lands which are generally undeveloped and cannot be precisely zoned due to inadequate information. With more than 2,900 feet of tideland frontage, there is no better use suited to the shoreside portion of this development as Harbor Commercial. Harbor Commercial provides an area for water-dependent or water-related uses with particular emphasis on transportation, tourist, recreational, commercial, or industrial enterprises which derive major economic or social benefit from a harbor location. The conditional use permit will allow a gated private road for a mixed-use community. A planned unit development is intended for the type of mixed use we are proposing. It states the development may include streets, circulation ways, utilities, residences, commercial buildings, open spaces, and other site features and improvements, some of which may not otherwise be individually permitted. A planned unit development is not incompatible with the Harbor Commercial Zoning District, but it is prohibited in Harbor Commercial. information we came across, Title 14 explicitly states the city shall provide water service within the city limits. The majority of the property falls within the city limits. The nearest city water main is more than 2,000 feet to the south at the Seward Marine Industrial Complex, and it is impractical to extend either city sewer or water to the site at this time. For the reasons above, we respectfully ask that the request for the subdivision and conditional unit permit for Mount Alice Estate Plan Unit Development Phase 1 be granted. We also ask the property to be rezoned to harbor commercial, and that Table 1510-226 land uses allowed be amended to allow a planned unit development commercial, or to allow, planned unit development in the harbor commercial zoning district. So, to say this is a little complicated, I think is an understatement. We've got a lot going on here, and the intention for the first phase is to focus on the land that is to the south of Nash Road, between Nash Road and the water. The owner, Iris, her vision is for this to be, on the first track, for there to be condominium that's residential. The overall intention is for this to be residential, but for there to be usage of the water, if that can be developed, for the benefit of the property owners. But we also don't want to be too restrictive with what's allowed. Harbor commercial is the zone that best fits. Maybe there's an opportunity for a new type of zoning that would be maybe harbor residential. So that's where we're at, and that's what we've got.
Thanks, Jonathan.
That's quite a bit to digest right now. How is this?
That's why we were happy to bring it to a work session.
Yeah, I think it's going to take a lot of chewing on, I think. If commissioners, do we have anybody to throw something out initially as we've tried to wrangle around all of this?
Yeah, I got one first. Obvious is the harbor residential, which obviously we don't have.
Yeah.
Now, the reason for the applicants potentially asking for a new zone, now is that to allow residential individuals to own a dock, to put a dock on? Because right now a residential lot can't have a dock, but a harbor commercial can have a dock, but a harbor commercial can't have a residential home. So is that the reasoning for that? Because
Yeah, we do want property owners to have access to the water. So that's the rationale for harbor commercial, but it really does sound like we're asking for something that's very new and very different.
So the amount of lots in Seward that have or can have a residential home on it that have water access are very, very limited. So I'm reluctant to create a new zone or a new code or something for only a handful of lots. But it seems like maybe a CUD could be added to add a residential dock. I'm not really inclined to create a whole nother subsection of paperwork for administration for 8 lots, because really there aren't that many city lots that are residential that do have beach access. But I feel like a CUP for a private resident dock could be something considered, yeah.
And I concur on that, because that doesn't make a lot of sense to me as well, because you're having to rewrite certain amounts of code and considerations, and I don't know if there's other areas that potentially could along Nash Road as it continues to go through, if that same thing could eventually apply at some point in time. But right now, what is I don't know, what was the choice of why this area specifically? Is it just because it's a one property owner, or is it, because it seems very complicated? And I don't know if it was better to take things off in smaller chunks, or because we're going to have to review a lot of different zoning areas and reconsider what we're going to title them as and what they're going to turn into.
Well,
I think Rithi Casagrande is on the line also, and she could probably speak to the history of it better than I can.
Thank you, Jonathan. I think the biggest thing is we were just really grateful, of course, that we could hold a work session. You know, you guys are the leaders, and we're proposing, we're shooting our arrow into a target, and we are depending on you guys and your expertise and your leadership to, you know, find out what's right for the citizens of Seward and for your mission and really guide us. So we wanted to start with you guys, and you know, it doesn't have to be complicated. We're open. We just want to develop the land and make it easy.
Okay, all right, thank you for that.
So, to address the point of private docks, if you look at the land use table in the packet, so the commission, this would be something for the commission to kind of mull over. Right now, and the only things listed in the land use table are docks or wharfs for industrial cargo or a passenger dock. So, would a private residential dock, according to your thoughts, fit into any of those, or would a private residential dock not be on this land use table? Because that makes a difference. If you think if these two on the land use table don't define a private residential dock, then code does say any use that is not, so it says, yeah, unlisted uses, so this is in 15.10.130, that if a use is not listed and is not specifically permitted in any other district, then a CUP would just be required. So this could be an option where, you know, if the zoning, I mean, even if the zoning is harbor commercial, which does fit docks even a little bit better, residential use seems to be maybe the primary goal of this area, but then we could have the option here that a CUP, that the owners on the coastal side could apply for a CUP to put in a residential dock, private residential dock.
Yeah, so CUP will work for that, and if in the future more properties on the east side of the bay that were privately held and you wanted, maybe a definition could be added, but so CUP would work for that, but I guess in addition, and slightly different, if they're requesting a harbor, they're requesting a harbor commercial zoning, but that doesn't allow housing, but then also requesting personal docks, there's a misconnect there. So is this either housing with personal docks or commercial with commercial docks? So, see what I mean? Like if we're saying yes, we can do a CUP for private docks, but they're requesting land that doesn't allow private homes.
Right, it would have to be a residential thing with a CUP, in my opinion, that for the private dock, but not to have a commercial dock, because I think you're having apples and oranges there.
Yeah.
And that's, yeah, to me, it seems to be, it could get pretty convoluted after a while. But I like the idea if it does go to this way, we have residential with the CUP for these 8 properties or whatever it winds up being, and this is just one of the many things we have to consider, that if we go ahead and if the other properties eventually get developed and the same kind of thing applies, then maybe we can go back and relook the code and the table of allowances to create that district reflective of how the property is actually being, you know, consistently used, if the CUP was being applied at the time, and then we could just create the new code as far as the authorizations of whether it be a residential with a residential dock, whatever they want to call it, harbor residential, and then just create that new. But I wouldn't want to do it now or anything else like that. Just want to be able to, if we get to that point, that we would have a residential area with a CUP.
So so for the applicants, I guess, you're requesting a rezone to a harbor commercial, but you also want homes on that. But it can happen. So can you clarify whether this is going to be commercial or homes with docks?
So if I may, Commissioner Charbonneau, I think that we are just as confused as you guys. If you look in the harbor commercial zoning for a dock, it's permitted outright. And our number one goal is to find a zoning that will incur the least obstacles for the landowner. So I love the idea of going residential. I think that you guys are spot on. I think R3 could probably even be a really good land use. You are correct 100%. We are looking for residential usage. Although we want as few restrictions for people to be able to use their homes in whatever capacity they can, including if they want to put a dock out in front of their house or a wharf or whatever, that they don't have to go to planning and zoning to get a permit to do so. So that is, I think, the biggest reason. There's a lot, and Courtney can chime in on this, but there's already a lot of obstacles to put a dock in that you have to go through. I believe the Army Corps of Engineers, but I'll let the professionals speak of that. But our number one goal is residential with as few P&Z meetings as possible to be able to use your property in a residential way.
Well, like Courtney stated, since residential, there isn't anything that in the land use that matches, then the land use states that if it isn't in there, if I'm correct, Courtney, then a CUP can be added. And since we don't have any other properties like this, we start out with a CUP versus changing code or definitions. So a residential with a request for CUP would get you docks and homes.
Yeah, that would work. And then I think,
So I think
But
the
res-
R3,
I think, what Rissy, what you're trying to say is there's already going to be a lot of, like there's the replat, then the general CUP for the development of the property, and then the rezone. So what we're trying to do is, find the most compatible zoning district that then would allow, these property owners don't have to come back to get CUPs either to build a single family home or to put in a dock. So what we want to think of a commission and community development are what things really require a CUP. So right now, for multifamily dwellings, we require all of those to get CUPs because the commission wants a chance to review that, verify parking, lot coverage, all of those things. What we could have the possibility within this planned unit CUP of establishing, because already within that planned unit, there's different things that the developers are putting in. The roads, different regulations that we're going to be requiring with that CUP and with the subdivision agreement. So we could use that opportunity to say, all right, within this planned unit development, private residential docks are allowed. Given this location of this private development, we'll make this a stipulation in this planned unit development CUP that docks are allowed. And then make our stipulations at that time of what we would want to require for property owners if they put in a dock. So then that would eliminate some of the extra, encumbrance for each property owner. That's one option. The other option is what concerns would the commission have with putting in docks that would make it a viable reason to see every single request that a property owner has to put in a dock. See what I'm saying? We don't want to create hurdles unnecessarily for people if
Yeah.
there's not a real concern or a reason for us to encumber a process. But if there is a reason, if there is a concern, then yeah, I think going the route of let's have a CUP for each residential dock is
I'd like to have some input
Inappropriate.
by the harbor master for sure in
Right.
terms of that. But also too, it's almost on a larger scale, almost a spot zoning thing on the other side of the bay. And that's what we're trying to get away from in some respects. Even though it's a planned unit development for a large piece of property, it's still something that is a different thing outside of what is normally permitted.
Well, I think that Courtney's first proposal there was kind of, I think it's pretty spot on, where I don't know if we want to go through and look at every single dock, since really, once you start building a dock into the water,
They all
it's
have
more
to be
Army
compatible.
Corps of Engineer.
Absolutely.
It's more than we want, that's not really our area.
That's why the harbor master and crew
Yeah,
involvement.
exactly. And I don't really want to create a new zoning, like harbor residential, because I don't think it's worthwhile for just a couple lots. And currently, we don't have a lot of lots that need this. But I wouldn't be opposed to saying a particular developmental plan couldn't have, docks are allowed within this area. And then they sort that out with Army Corps of Engineers and the harbor and whatnot.
Is standard amongst each one of the property
Yeah.
owners of some sort to be able to do that. So they know, they're the smart ones in terms of what needs to be comprised of that stuff. And then as long as the homeowners adhere to that, it's almost like a group CUP in some respects.
More or less.
And that they all have to have something that's compatible or comparable or they all seem to work together and it doesn't create an encumbrance on one place or another, and it creates challenges whether for the harbor or for what the engineers dictate. But I still am a little concerned about are we going to take this large piece of property, 100 some odd acres, and adjust everything, and are we going to be compromising the land the standards within our table here?
Yeah, we definitely wouldn't want to do that. I think, where private residential docks aren't listed, they're an unlisted use currently.
Right.
And if it was still included under the CUP for the planned unit development, I think we would be still compatible with, what is required by code, but definitely, like you said, it would require input from the harbor master first to see what requirements he would want to see, what concerns he may have, and then in that conditional use permit for the planned unit development, if we're going to include private residential docks to be allowed for those
So,
oceanside, that we would list at that time, these are the requirements.
That's stupid.
But each
That's why I'd
property-
hate to want to go after each one, because each person would have to have, they might have their own unique perspective on it, but if they have a set of standards that they have to meet,
Right.
but, and I don't know if the land, as it continues one direction or another, if there's the event potential for this same kind of development. I don't know. I'm not as familiar with the terrain in that area or is this just sort of an isolated thing, just a unique piece of property that this only applies to?
I think that for the moment, if the applicant wanted to go residential, I don't think there's any reason why we couldn't make it fairly simple for the whole thing, for the ocean side anyway, obviously, to allow docks in there without changing code. And if more properties opened up down the bay and we started moving in years into the future, and this happened over and over, then
There's a
we can
standard.
create a standard for it. But at the moment,
That's my
I don't
thought.
want to create a standard. I just want to allow them within this area, and if more come up, we can create a definition and create a code for it. But right now, I don't want to add all that extra for just 7 months.
No, that's
But I
not
want
what-
them to be able to have their docks. So I don't see why we can't put in the use development plan. This particular area is subject or can have residential docks. And then they sort those out with harbor master Army Corps of Engineers, whoever.
I think we should consult with them, at least preliminary, to see if it's even viable in a lot of these. And I know these folks have done their research and everything else. I'm sure they've probably thought it through, and that the terrain there is adequate for docks. But I'd like to, verify it with the smart guys that do docks.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that might be a step too much, where let's just let them have the ability to do them. And if they want to spend the money and time to see if a dock is viable in that spot, then that's on them. Because I don't want to look into every single, I don't think we should spend the city's time looking into every single spot to see if a dock can be built there. That's more of a engineering aspect.
So what you're saying is we can green light, your opinion is we should green light docks, and if it can work, if it can't work, the harbor master and the Department of Engineers will be able to let you know?
Yeah, that's their business.
I don't know.
But I don't see any reason why a planned development in this area where we couldn't, allow residential lots within this area to have docks. And then everybody who buys that, or the developer, whoever wants to, can put the research into the engineering, can go through, find out if it is feasible, so on and so forth.
Sean, any ideas?
Oh, the dock stuff, I'm just following along here. I mean, what I'm thinking of is Sean Ullman here. I would say I've been on the commission for a year or so relatively new. And where I'm at is just kind of zooming out and back into the history of this property. And I'm just curious if any development or use with this property has come before planning and zoning in the past, or if there's some backstory with this property. And yeah, that's just where I'm kind of there at the moment.
I can give some little bit of back history, and then I don't know, Rissy, you might have some additional history to add to it, but yeah, I couldn't give you the year, sorry, but there was a CUP granted on this property, actually in about the area of Tract B for a campground. And my understanding, I think, was an employee type of campground. You correct me if I'm wrong, Rissy. But anyway, so the CUP was granted for a campground, and a well was dug in that area to support that campground. And I'm not sure how long it operated and that sort of thing, but that's the most development that I'm aware of has happened so far on this property.
That'll be a lot
So
of
it was, sorry,
No, go ahead, Rissy. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, you.
No, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So it was late 90s that there was a campground, and we actually have blueprints, and it was a commercial campground. It was intended, the void was going to be used because at the time, back then, campgrounds within the city limits, you had to move every 2 weeks. So they were going to build a high-end campground for even people that wanted to come work for the summer, if they could have a place to call home and not have to move every 2 weeks. And it had a lodge and shower rooms and bathrooms and lots of hookups. I can't remember exactly how many, but I do believe they got the well in. Septic was designed and bought. The pieces are all bought. They're not installed yet. And and all the engineering and architectural drawings were done for the, I don't know what you'd call it, it wasn't a lodge, but basically where everyone would shower and bathe. And the electricity, I do believe, was also upgraded at the time.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I'm not aware of any rezone. You're welcome.
Yeah. Brennan?
Yeah, I just was wondering about, is there beach access in that area? I'm not familiar with it, or nothing there. Okay.
pretty,
There's a lot of, oh, go ahead, sorry.
Not public.
no,
Okay.
So, I guess for the applicant, we need to, I guess, touch on a couple. There were some topics brought forward, like, so we need to, whether it's going to be, whether we can get the docs in, like what, we have a couple bullet points, most importantly, to kind of hit, I think, in this. Does the, for rezoning, I guess, to residential with making it with docks possible, does that work for the applicant? Does that meet that sort of, that bullet point that they were talking about, or it's possible, so
I don't know.
is that gonna work?
Are you up? It's so hard because I can't see you guys, so I don't know if someone's calling on me. I'm sorry. So I'm just gonna wait to speak
want to
until
still see the
Madam Chair
visual?
can call on me maybe, because I don't want to be interrupting.
Well, it's a work session, so.
It's a work session, you can just jump in,
We can
Missy.
jump in anywhere. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, you guys brought this forward and you have some concerns. I want to make sure that we hit all the bullet points that you're concerned about and talk on all of them so we can, make this work correctly for you. And so,
Yeah.
So
I
you-
think so, and I think, go ahead, John.
No, I was just gonna say probably the exact same thing you're gonna say, and yes, rezone to residential with docks allowed is exactly what we're looking for.
Okay.
It's just in our discussions with Courtney, we ended up going with Harbor Commercial because docks were allowed by right. But this seems like a much smoother path to getting what we're after.
yeah.
And
Then,
also having the outright use of condominiums, right? So, I think we would be leaning more towards R3.
more towards
Okay,
R3.
R3.
For all lots or the larger ones, like tract B and C and D?
All lots.
Okay, all 11.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And all these lots, I presume, will need wells and septic, so they'll need a CUP for that as well. Correct?
The wells and septic
Yeah.
would fall under the subdivision agreement requirements.
Which
Yeah,
is,
the city would have to.
yeah, which is
coordinate
no big
that.
deal because there's not water or septic tie-ins within any feasible distance. And at some point in the future, if they do get brought in, they'll tie in later, but I don't really see that happening
Yeah.
anytime, so that's not a problem.
And there's a consideration of developer reimbursement program that goes along with that as well. So that's
What-
another aspect.
Explain that part for me, because that water part was something up front that I was thinking about. So city properties have to use city water,
Yeah.
but it's not feasible to here. But it's,
So,
go
sorry,
ahead.
give me a minute.
No,
So
it's
if they're in city limits, they need to be on city water and city septic.
Yeah.
But you can give a CUP for allowing wells and septic if it's not feasible to tie in.
Gotcha.
But usually, that's also added into that if at some point city water and city septic is brought in within a feasible distance, then that lot is required to tie in.
They would have to change.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
is allowed.
Yeah,
when
so
it's
I'm not, I don't believe that, and I know it's just terminology, but I don't believe you can actually get a CUP for
Okay.
Well,
a well or septic, but there is an allowance in code that if you're more than 200 feet away from city sewer, that you can put in the septic, with the stipulation that once city sewer goes past your lot, you have to hook in
Connect to it.
to city sewer.
Okay.
But there is no stipulation in code for water. So we were our hands were tied at that point, where technically, according to code, this lot would have to connect to city water, but it just, 2,000 feet away, that's not a feasible
Yeah.
requirement. So that's one of the reasons, we're going this planned unit development route, because the plan, so that's probably, sorry, but Commissioner Sharman, you're referring to with the CUP
Yeah.
is so that's where the CUP for a planned unit development allows this development to then be planned with well and septic, because it's going to be, the whole development is going to be a planned unit, private development. And so they'll still have a subdivision agreement with the replat, and then with that subdivision agreement, instead of outlining regulations for how they're going to connect to city water and sewer and the types of pipes you have to use and all that sort of stuff, it'll be requirements for the well and the septic, which, I mean, we'll have to, that'll be something, you know, we'll have to work out when we get to that subdivision agreement.
That's doable.
Right.
Yeah, because it meets the deviation from
Yes.
code, and so you can do that. It's almost like this whole thing's almost like a giant CUP, for lack of a better term.
What are some examples of planned unit developments in sewer?
This would be
No,
the first.
yeah.
Okay.
And then, okay, so that's docks. I'm trying to work through all the points.
Yeah, I was wondering about the
So,
sewer and the septic.
zoning and docks, kind of got that worked out. We got water and sewer is gonna work out-ish, to work. An applicant, what was the other, I believe there was I heard a code amendment, but I didn't catch what that was referring to.
The code amendment would have been to allow residential in the harbor commercial. Or planned unit development isn't allowed in harbor commercial, but we've worked through that. So, the CUP would be for the gated private road. And I think, yeah, Courtney, unless I'm wrong, I think we hit everything.
Yeah. There was, if you don't mind touching on just real briefly, Jonathan, just kind of that process with the borough for the plat and the steps that you'll have to take, you know, once you get preliminary approval from the City of Seward Planning and Zoning Commission, then the borough requires different testing to be done on the sites before the final plat is approved. Could you just touch on that for a little bit for the commission?
Yeah. So that's a little bizarre to me that I even have to explain this, but I guess you guys are used to having sewer and water. So with any properties that do not have public sewer and water available, there's a section of state law that DNR controls on the standards. To support well and septic, a lot needs to be at a minimum 40,000 square feet. We've met that standard, and per borough code, we're required to do soils testing on any lots that are less than 2.5 acres.
200,000.
200,000 square feet, so just under 5 acres. You're not required to do soils testing. So the majority of the lots would all be required to have soils testing before anything can be, or before the final plat would be approved by the Kenai Peninsula Borough. Their review is mostly secondary and primarily technical, but the soils is part of their review process.
Okay.
And what would be, have you guys thought about like a plan moving forward if for some reason the soil test comes back and shows, you know, a well isn't feasible there? Or are you waiting to get those tests back and then determine a plan?
Well, we have the well and the septic information from the proposed campground, so we're reasonably certain we won't have a problem.
Okay. So all the way through all those, what is it, 11, lot 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and
Track B.
All 11.
all of those, you're fairly confident then that from the previous testing on track B that a well will be feasible there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
But that still has to be tested, as I understand.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And I have one, it's an odd question, and I know with Borough and it wasn't Kenai Peninsula Borough, but it was up in the Matsu Borough, with homes that have well and septic, there's a minimum standard of size per unit housing unit and how separated things have to be. I'm, not knowing exactly the size of these lots, you're fully, well within those. 40,000, but yes.
Yeah, we did design this to the standard, so all lots meet or exceed those standards.
Okay.
With septic design, and this is outside of the scope of what we do, and I'm pretty sure it's outside of the scope of what you guys do, but with septic design, it's usually designed to the number of bedrooms, so they have an expectation of how many users. So the system is either scaled up or scaled down to handle that. And then for water, for a well, the DNR has a specific standard on how many gallons per minute it's supposed to produce.
Okay, thank you.
And that can be augmented by adding a storage tank.
Great.
I have one more question. So the road, I just want to make sure that the road is going to be a 60-foot road. Is that planned in? From the paperwork I have, I don't have the road width.
Yes, the intention was for that to be a standard width road, but it would be private and gate.
Okay. I just want to make sure it's a standard up to city code road size.
Yeah, and on that, that would be something definitely that would be required in talking. We did meet with the department heads, electric, public works, fire, building, to kind of get their input on this. And yeah, that would be one of the concerns the fire chief has, is just being able to get a fire truck in there and getting that
Cul-de-sac's large
turnaround.
enough to, as long as they're okay with all of that.
Yep.
Okay.
So, and then also on that note, the fire chief did mention that their code does allow development to occur that doesn't have fire hydrants, but the requirement then would be to compensate for the lack of fire hydrant, that each of the dwellings would need a sprinkler system.
Okay.
The sprinkler system wouldn't be like commercial level. It would be, the requirement is more of like a residential sprinkler system, and it's designed primarily to provide enough time for occupants to get out of the home safely. But yeah, so there is something in place within fire code that also addresses this situation as far as like fire hydrants and that sort of thing. But yeah, if there's any other questions that you do have that pertain to other departments, like the harbor master, just, you can let me know, and we can bring those departments into this conversation as well.
Okay.
One of the things that I just wanted to simply ask is also too the impact on Nash Road when this goes in, because Nash Road is pretty heavily traveled now, and adding to this, is there any sort of consideration, I know, and the out years for the borough to improve anything on Nash Road, because Nash Road is can be pretty tough. I'm comparing it to KGB in the valley, when they did all that development out there, and how the roads degraded so quickly on the main thoroughfare that they had to go back in. Is there any discussions or thoughts about that? Because I'm not sure how many people you plan on putting back there, but with all the multi-families.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any plans that the borough has, but it would be interesting to look into that.
Isn't Nash Road a state road?
Yes, I'm not sure. It's borough. The borough maintains out. Is it borough? I'm trying to remember, because I know
The borough maintains it.
the borough may maintain that. I'm trying to think, because it's broken up quite a bit. City
Yeah.
maintains part of it. The borough, as I recall, does it. All the years that I was out going to Spring Creek, there's a lot of borough activity out there, but I could be completely wrong. It doesn't matter. It could be state DOT. Either way, I'm just concerned about the amount of traffic that's on Nash Road too, just for the safety of the residents across the board.
Well,
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
It's Ruth.
Yeah.
I don't know if this helps at all, but Mayor McShippy, when he was senator, did DOT my phone number to interview me, along with a handful of other citizens when they were before they were doing the road construction. And one of the things that I did point out to them during our interview was that there's 147 acres that I am aware of alone down Nash Road, and I think the biggest concern for me was Nash Road getting onto the highway. And I would hope that they heard that and they'll have some sort of merge or something, because it seems to me that that's where you could put more traffic down Nash. That's where the biggest issue is going to be, people getting onto the highway.
That's
But
true.
it sounded like it was received and that maybe they addressed something.
Yeah, with,
If I could break in for this, this is Ken, and there's a standard in Anchorage for traffic generation per residence, and they base it on 10 trips per day per lot. Our track B for the condos, we're looking at 10 two-bedroom units, so I come up with a total of possibly 23 units there at 10 trips a day. That's 230 trips for about 10 per hour. And that amount of traffic shouldn't overload Nash Road.
Right. Well, I hope not. That's because I think about the growth of JAG as well as the traffic that continues to go back and forth with the prison system when you have 170 some odd people going back and forth at the prison. On top of that, plus the residents along Nash Road. I just don't want to create more challenges on Nash Road and make it even more, a little less, safe, because it can be a challenge. That's why I'm just trying to anticipate if the state or the borough or whoever was going to do any improvements out there, because it is a busy road.
If I can interject an observation, the biggest impact would be to residents leaving and heading into Seward, because they'd have to make a left turn to get out onto Nash Road.
Right.
It's not going to impact the traffic that's driving by, and the traffic that's entering the subdivision is just going to turn right. So the impact, it's an important thing to be considerate of, but I don't think that they're going to be huge.
Yeah, I agree with the applicant that this development, if it goes ahead the way we're looking at it, most of the traffic issues will be turning left. And as we hopefully develop more on the other side of the bay, the road will have to be adjusted for it, but that's a future us problem, because we don't have it developed yet. So
Yeah, and also it's not, it's not our sort of like our bailiwick, but it's still, but it's just a
It's good to think
consideration.
about it, yes.
I think it's important, because it's the safety and security of all the people that are out there. So,
Are there any private gated communities in Seward now?
no.
The closest thing to a private community would be the Lowell Townhouse subdivision, but it's not really a private community. It's just that each of the property owners own those roads. Those roads in there are privately owned roads, but
Is that
But
like
it's
off
not.
of First there? Homer
right
Valley?
there at the mouth of Lowell Canyon.
Yeah.
Right across from,
Oh, I see, yeah.
well, up from the hospital, but yeah,
Okay. Okay.
it's not really a great comparison to what this is going to be.
Yeah, this is Sean Ullman again. I mean, it's really just interesting hearing, this stuff. There's a lot for me, certainly. And I would just point out that there is no public here. I mean, that's kind of, something I'm wanting right now. Like, I want public input. So hopefully we'll get that going forward. But thank you, for sharing. I don't know, share on, but it's interesting to hear about.
Brendan, anything?
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's a lot to take in, and I think Commissioner Ullman captured it really well. More public input on this would be nice to hear as well. This is a lot of firsts, I think,
Absolutely.
in many ways.
It's exciting, but it's also a lot to chew on
Yeah.
and figure out.
Yeah.
Because you do it wrong, then it sort of sets the standard of something that's people don't want to deal with or want to deal with. So we want to make sure we get it right.
And yeah, that's something I know in our meeting with the department heads, the public works director and the fire chief, they have experience with working with private developments in their previous locations where they've worked. So we can always draw on them for some input and their experience with what things have have worked well, or what have been some of their concerns, or that sort of thing. I know, like, for example, the fire chief said as far as like the gated community, where he's been before, those gated communities have had special locks put on the gate where, you know, fire trucks can be able to access that community at any time to address any emergencies. So just there are minor things like that that, you know, we don't have any experience with in Seward, but hopefully some of these other, you know, some of the department heads may have had experiences, and we can even reach out to other communities, because I believe on the other side of Peninsula there are gated communities, so we can reach out to those cities and see how they've dealt with some of those issues.
Thanks. Anything else?
I just want to make sure we address everything with the applicant, all the concerns. Is that anything that concerned about, or?
I mean, I think it's a great initial overview
Of
and
course.
things like this, so I think we're doing. Is there anything else that we can answer for your concerns?
I don't think so. No, you guys solved our problem. So thank you very much. Going with residential and just a variance to allow, or is it a variance to allow docks, or is that part of the CUP?
Well, yeah, we would just include it as part of that planned unit development CUP.
As the big item for
Okay,
itself,
great.
and
Yeah, no,
written into it.
it's a fantastic solution, and we thank you for that.
So Jonathan, what would be the ideal time frame that you're looking at for potentially when these applications would come before the commission?
When's your next cutoff date?
They would be for the December meeting, so the beginning of November. Like the first week in November would be the cutoff for the December meeting.
Okay, we'll try to get organized.
Okay, great. And so I guess, and this is more of like a housekeeping item, but for the commission to kind of weigh in on this, what makes the most sense then? Because I believe, Jonathan, you can correct me if you're wrong, that you would put forth in the same meeting the replat and the CUP and the rezone. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So
If it's not too big of a package, we would want to submit everything at once. If it needs to be handled as chunks, we can approach it differently, and that's your call.
I'm okay with everything together as long, I mean, we talked about it now, as long as everything meets with city code, fire, which we're all, you know, so far everything's been looking pretty good. As long as everything meets with all of those, traffic looks good, and the docks are all tied in there, it doesn't, you know, I'd rather just do it all as one. I mean, no, I don't think there's any reason to break it apart because, you know.
Yeah, and I like that idea. The only thing I'm concerned about is when we have whether we have a public hearing on these things and different people targeting different areas, it could get incredibly convoluted and confusing for folks, I think, at times when they have a variety of things. I sort of like to take a measured and staged approach for me, but I'm good with whatever the commission wants to go with. We'll just bite off each portion as we can.
Yeah, I think, Chair Sullivan, you bring up a good point. So Jonathan, that may be something to consider, is the overwhelming factor for the public. If there's not a serious setback to maybe doing the rezone at a future meeting, then maybe just doing the replat and the CUP initially. But yeah, as far as the commission and of course the planning community development, there's not a real concern as far as like doing all three together. It's not too big of a package. It just, yeah.
My apologies for not being familiar with how your public hearings run, but would it be possible for people to comment on each section of this individually and for the board to address each section individually. I know usually with deliberations, you go through each section, but if there was a mechanism for the public to comment as it went, then they'd be able to more easily follow the process.
Yeah, each item would be a separate public hearing item, so the replat would be one, the CUP would be another, and the rezone would be another.
I don't see why we couldn't do it like that in one meeting. I mean, it's, for the most part, I mean, it's a complicated item, but we've been able to talk through the hardest parts of it. And for the, right now, it seems like we've worked out most of them, and, well, all of them. There's, you know, they meet with everything that we set forth, and the few things that we don't have a ruling on, we've seemed to work it out, and the public can talk about it, and the public's not here, so.
They may be
They
here
didn't
later
take the
though, once
time
it
to
gets
come
out there.
here, so.
Yeah, well, this was sort of a short notice thing as it popped up too, because originally we were supposed to be discussing the muni land plan, and then this was, you know, cropped up, and so it was a bit of a short notice for some folks, and I think, and I just reflect on when we had the Hemlock subdivision replat and rezone at one time, and I mean, it was obviously a very emotional kind of thing. You may not get the same kind of thing over on the other side of the bay, but I just wanted to be sure that everybody has an opportunity to chew on it a little bit, provide it, and, you know, and provide their input. I mean, you know, it's, it is, you know, you have a lot of the background in it, a lot of people don't, and there's going to potentially be some, whether it's emotion or whether it is, but we have to have the opportunity for, you know, a public discourse for people to be able to say what they think, and then we can move forward. And I don't know if there's a timeline for these folks. Rissy and crew, do you have a particular timeline you have, or what do you have?
I just have a question, if I may, regarding the 3 items that are coming forward.
Mm-hmm.
It's my understanding that a rezone comes up for 2 public hearings. Is that correct or no?
Yeah, that's correct. It would come up for one public hearing with the commission, and then the city council would also have a public hearing for it.
And the city council has 2 public hearings and enactment, right? So for a rezone, it'll go before planning zoning once, and then it'll go before council for public hearing, and then a second public hearing and enactment. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it's like an introduction, and I'm not sure exactly. I mean, you may know better, but yeah, the introduction and then the enactment. So yeah, it'll be up 2 times
Okay.
for city council.
And then it has to go to the preliminary replat. We'll
Yeah.
have to go to the borough as well.
Right.
So it's multiple times for public hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess just in the discussion, because I love public input as well, I think it's the most crucial piece of all of this. And I just weigh with Commissioner Charbonneau that I think you guys could address all 3 together, because they really go together, you know, like if one of the wheels fall off the bus, you know, we don't want to spend a whole bunch of money going down a road to find out, you know, 4 months later, something fell through. And then we have a development that maybe Iris really isn't into, if you know what I mean. So the tighter we can keep them together, I feel like things that need a lot of public hearing, our charter and our code has created that opportunity, and it will happen. I don't know anything about PUD. Is that the name of it, Courtney?
Yeah.
How many hearings those take? Conditional, yeah. So
Yeah, that
maybe
would
you
just
could
be
just
one.
elaborate on how much public hearing those other 2 items get.
Yeah, the planned unit development would just be the one public hearing with the commission, since it's a conditional use permit.
And then we would consider all 3 things, and they would forward from there to the borough, or to the council, and then to the borough, and then to the council again for the public hearing and the rest.
So the replat would have the commission's review, and then the borough, the CUP, the planned unit development CUP would just have the commission's review and approval. And then the rezone would have commission public hearing, and then 2 public hearings at city council.
Well, I would personally like to do them all together. If this land was a piece of city property or public, I would say stretch it out so we can get everybody in here, but this is a private piece of property with private owners who are wanting to do something with their land. And like Rissy said, it not only goes to us for the next meeting, but then it goes to council and then it goes to the borough. So there's ample chance for somebody to say something, but we're not making a decision on the town's land. We're making it on a private owner's land.
Okay, I can see that point.
If I may add an observation, in Anchorage, they notice every property owner within 500 feet. If we had to do this for this property, we would send out 4 notices.
Yeah.
City of Seward,
300 feet.
State of Alaska, the property owner to the immediate west, south of Nash Road, and the property owner to the immediate west, north of Nash Road. So, public involvement, yeah, getting the whole city involved is fantastic, but this only immediately impacts 4 different property owners.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, point taken, I'll support that.
Were you going to say something, John?
No, I mean, that is a good point, the private versus public. I like that you brought that up. But there is like the first, like these changes to code that we're doing for the first time, and that affects the whole city. But, yeah.
I think we're gonna
Won't be a
affect code right
change.
yet.
No
Oh,
code
okay.
change.
Yeah, we're just gonna do the CUP, if we look at it, and the proposal be residential, and then have the CUP for the private dock, as
Okay.
opposed to doing any, I don't wanna do any
So
code
no
changes.
code change.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's stuff that's been done, there's good precedent for
Yeah.
the CUPs. And then we just hit on like a few new things, but, yeah.
Brennan?
Yeah, I don't have a problem doing them all together, I think.
Okay.
Seems to like-
So yeah, if they come all together, just advising the commission, and you can give input if you want them in a different order. But initially, what makes sense to me is the replat would come first on the agenda, and then the planned unit development CUP, because currently in resource management, which they are currently zoned, a planned unit development is allowed by CUP. So we could
In
approve the
resource
CUP for resource management, and then the third item would be the rezone. It sounds like to R3, and a planned unit development is still allowed by CUP in R3. So approving the CUP for the planned unit development and resource management would just
Seems
basically,
logical,
yeah,
yeah,
just
good progression.
flow right into, even if you rezone it to an R3, planned unit development is still allowed by CUP. So that's kind of the stages that I would bring to you, if that
Makes good sense.
Yeah.
makes
okay.
sense.
Okay. Anybody have anything else? The applicant, anything right now? The briefer?
No, this sounds good. Again, I thank you for solving our problem here, and look forward to bringing this case to you.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah, and thanks Jonathan and Ken and Rissy. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you all so much. We really appreciate your guys' guidance and expertise, and I think the main thing is that we all just want everything to flow. And we're really looking for something that's easy for everyone, and having ample, citizen input and your guys' input, and together we're gonna make something that's beautiful and beneficial for all of Seward.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think with that, unless any commissioners have anything to offer right now, we may adjourn, but you look like you got something to say. No? Okay. Okay, then we are adjourned at 7:03. Okay.
Thank you, Courtney.
Yeah, I think I decided it, but.